evening, everybody. This is the Auburn Finance Committee. Tonight is June 25th, 2025. It's 5:30 p.m. Let's read our remote participation script. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, 1-786-535-3211 with an access code of 991-599-357, or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely or present can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Patrick Jones.
Here.
George Graham.
Here.
Stephen Consiglio.
Here.
And Andrew Shah.
Here.
Town officials and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. CFO Town Accountant Karen Harnies.
Here.
And Administrative Assistant Danielle Chamberlain Roberts.
Here.
Okay, very good. I don't think we have anybody appearing remotely, so we don't have to worry about roll call vote. First on the agenda are some transfers. We'll start with the Auburn Police Department. Sir, how are you?
Good,
Thank you. Did you want to give us a quick rundown before we? Do we just have, I think we have, in our order, we have the building and ground and some court time ones, and then moving on to overtime. Any highlights you want to give us?
The building and ground repair is things were going very well, quite frankly, up until the beginning of June, which, you know, we've had some unusually warm weather, obviously, in the last couple of days or weeks. Things were going great, and unfortunately, the system has kind of started to buck that trend a little bit. So we've had some invoices that have come in that we weren't anticipating. But with that being said, we are definitely still well below total spending for FY24 in HVAC, and we are, as I've mentioned, I think in previous meetings, slated for a repair or replacement rather of the chiller, the entire chiller unit, but it doesn't come until the fall. So we're stuck with what we're stuck with, and we have to keep repairing it. As far as the court time transfer, there was some unexpected or unscheduled appearances at grand jury for our detectives based on a couple of significant cases, and grand jury appearances don't get to the court calendar. They just kind of do them as they come up, like, hey, we have an opening this week and you guys can be here, or can you be here? So that's where that deficit was caused from. And then lastly, the overtime is just a safety net thing. We're very close. We have the fireworks coming up on Friday, which is approximately around about a $10,000 commitment as far as total hours and all that. You know, if we had a quiet week other than that, then we'd be okay, but I just want to make sure that I think that's more than sufficient to get us through. But after this week comes out, we were down to probably, minus the fireworks, would be down to like $4,000 to $5,000, and that's a little possibly tight for the last week.
Any questions on any of these for the chief?
I have one. I'm pleased actually to see that there is a request to transfer to court time, and it's a minimus amount, I think, for the amount of court time you have to do, but it's much more in line. So I have no question really about that other than you said that it was unscheduled.
So, yeah, normally with court appearances, the summonses, we get them ahead of time. The court officer puts them on a calendar, excuse me, so I'm able to, you know, cost out exactly where we're going to be and everything. With grand jury, the grand jury, it depends on what the caseload is, and the grand jury kind of schedules its own appearances. They don't really notify the court officer. Sometimes they'll call the detectives directly and say, can you be here on Thursday? And there was two, one was a shooting and one was a Bobcat theft of large equipment. So two detectives had to appear on 2 consecutive days, so
Sure.
that added up to whatever the deficit is or thereabouts.
And I think when I think back on some of the year-end transfers we've done for the overtime, they've been much more excessive. So again, I want to compliment you on, even though it's necessary, what I think to be a very manageable expectation. So that's it.
Any additional questions? Andrew?
Just on the HVAC, I believe last time you said it was, we also have like the storage servers for the body cam footage and stuff. That's part of this same HVAC unit that keeps giving the problems? Is that correct, or am I wrong in that?
Sorry, but did you say related to the body cameras?
Well, so the HVAC system, you've had a couple where you've had to do that. Is that just the HVAC for the
It's
building?
just
in general?
HVAC, yeah, it's just the heating and cooling. Quite frankly, the company that we switched to in FY25, they did a boiler repair for us in FY24 and that we had to bid out, and they did a great job. They saved us a ton of money. So essentially the savings paid for the preventative maintenance this year.
Fair enough.
And until we got into June, we had no additional
Charges.
issues, no additional repairs other than just the preventative maintenance. So we were out of it for a little under $6,000, and I was celebrating prematurely, apparently.
Fair enough. But
I think at one of the previous
Yeah.
meetings, we had talked about the importance of the server rooms and all the technology
Oh,
in the building,
correct.
making sure the building remained.
yeah, I guess that was where I was
Yes.
going, yeah.
Unfortunately, with the issue that we had most recently, earlier in the week, the humidity got high enough that it actually caused the paint in the cell room to bubble, and that becomes an issue down the road because the cell room gets inspected at least once a year.
Yep.
And, you have to remediate those problems. So now we have to paint the floor for the 3rd time, I believe. So it's,
Fair enough.
it has like a cascading or rippling effect of there's
Yeah.
other things that go wrong when the HVAC isn't right.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, if not, I'll read them in. Coming from the miscellaneous supplies account, amount requested $1,200, going to building and ground repair, reason given additional HVAC invoice.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion? And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Coming from the Sergeant Quinville account, amount requested $1,000, also going to building and ground repair, reason given anticipated HVAC invoice.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And from the longevity account, amount requested $1,800, going to court time, reason given clear deficit from that line.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, from the patrol officers line, amount requested $7,500, going to the overtime account, reason given end of fiscal year staffing coverage.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Well, appreciate it.
Okay, next we have the Department of Public Works.
Can I just ask a quick question before we start on this? It's fine, you can stay there. At the Selectmen's meeting on Monday night, Chief Lemon tendered his retirement. Is there enough money, will that need to be before the end of fiscal year for payroll, or will that fall into the new fiscal year? Is it a
It'll
transfer?
fall into the new fiscal year.
It'll fall into the new, okay. Great, thank you. Okay, now I'm good.
We know what that amount is.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good question. Department of Public Works. Nick, do you want to give us any updates or any lines you want to go over, or do you want to?
Sure. I mean, I know we've got, I think, about 10 transfers in front of you tonight. Do you want me to just go through each one, or do you want to take one at a time? However the board would prefer.
Do you want just any highlights, ones you think maybe, I mean, obviously you know which ones are not,
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just kind of touch on each of them. So,
Okay.
We have one for let's see, for the highway overtime, and then again for let's see, the parks overtime. Those are going to cover for the 4th of July celebration. That's this Friday. So I want to make sure they have enough money in that, since that's going to be in this fiscal year. We have a cemetery wages transfer because we had a cemetery employee who left. We had to pay out benefits. and cemetery overtime, it's just a cover for additional overtime, and we have an internment this weekend that we wanted to make sure was covered as well. They get overtime when they do weekend internments. We have a transfer going into signboard maintenance account. The signboards are going to be needed for the 4th of July celebration. I need to get some batteries. They're pretty expensive batteries, so we need to do a transfer for that. We've got a building maintenance transfer. There was some higher than expected repair costs at DPW. This in particular is to cover for the rodent control services contract that we have. That the amount encumbered for that had to be reduced earlier in the year to pay for some garage door repairs. So we're bringing this transfer will bring that back to pay for that. We have a transfer for traffic light repair on Auburn Street. There was an outstanding invoice that we hadn't gotten back that we realized had never come back to us. So this should cover for the cost of that out of the fuel account. And then there is a golf course transfer as well because the golf course did pretty well this year, which means that there are more credit card charges. So we had to cover for banking fees. I think that's all of them, but happy to field any questions if there was anything that stuck out.
Anybody have any questions on any ones that jump out on you there? Or? I noticed the signboard. Is that the signboard that's at Pappas that was reading? We were having I think a Dense Day celebration coming up.
I don't remember if it was that one or the other one.
Yeah. I wasn't quite sure who was trying to do an abbreviation. Maybe 4th would have been somehow worked in there better.
But I know they were having issues with the program on it. We had to come back and
It was like on a 4-screen cycle. You had a
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
You had to
right.
come to a stop. I think on Pack.
I think that was an unrelated issue, but yes.
Yeah.
I have a question through the chair, but to the accountant. On the third page in, there's an electricity traffic lights line item. And it's just, I want to be sure that as we're coming to the end of the fiscal year and we're going to be heading into July, are we pretty current with most of our utilities? Is there anybody that has a utility bill that's too far in arrears, like that they haven't billed us in a while? Do we have quarterly, or is anyone, I just want to make sure that as we get to 6:30, we don't find out later that we have a utility bill that was for fiscal year 25 or 26 and going into the new year.
The utility bills are paid monthly.
Right.
So we should be right there, just
So
waiting
this
for,
is,
waiting for
I'm
June's
just,
bill.
it begs the question that, is this 500 to cover a bill that might be covering May? Or is this something that's going to get us through the end of the fiscal year? Maybe that's a better way to ask it.
So this, excuse me, this particular transfer for the electricity traffic lights is what you're referring to?
Right.
That's to cover for the repair of a traffic light?
Right, but it is for the repair, but it's coming from I'm taking under account that it's coming from a line that you might pay a bill from. And that's why I want to make sure that we're leaving, and we're leaving $98, and I want to make sure that that $98 isn't going to be needed to pay a June
You're
utility
referring to the
bill.
fuel account that it's coming from?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so that, I know that is for our building utility gas, and I believe that there is still money encumbered in that account that could
Okay,
pay
so
for any
there's an
outstanding bills.
encumberment to
And we
cover.
don't think we would even need that, but there is money available in this particular account.
I guess
know your question
that's
is more
what I was
general.
looking for, the word encumbered, so I'm
There's money
comfortable.
encumbered, correct.
Thank you. Yep, we're good.
And I know this might be aside to what you were saying, but as far as I can speak from my experience in the sewer division, I know sometimes National Grid can be very late with some of their billing. So I haven't combed through all of the bills as far as what we're up to date as far as some of our other utilities, but sometimes there's no way to get it until it's too late,
And do our policies allow us to encumber because of POs? I mean, if we know that somebody's 30 or 45 days out, that, we've got a way to encumber that money going into the new fiscal year so that's available to pay the prior year bill? Is that through a PO?
That's correct. So the money will be carried over to fiscal '26 if we anticipate one more bill still outstanding.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question on the banking charges, the 6,200. I'm assuming that's because more people are charging their services.
that is my
golf
understanding.
course.
I don't know if you mean a higher percentage of people or a higher total number of sales. It's probably a combination of the two.
Either one. I mean, it's, because I remember we were discussing credit card charges. That's what the $6,200 is for credit card charges?
Yes.
Any additional questions on these? I'll start reading them through. From the highway wages account.
Actually, I'd like to move that we take the first one where it has the highway wages account. We take the first three as one, and then some of them will have to be done as individual, but I believe they're all coming from the same account on the first three
On
or
which ones?
four. It's hard to,
No, I think we've got coming from wages, laborer.
but they're all coming out of
No, it's
1111.
We can take the last three, the parks laborer.
the last three. You
The
can-
last three,
three.
okay.
So let me read the
we'll do
first
the
one and
first
then-
one, and then I'll make the motion.
Great, thank you. So the first one coming from the highway wages account, amount requested $10,000 going to highway overtime. This is a transfer to cover the July 4th celebration and cleanup.
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And
Now I make a motion to take transfers 2, 3, and 4 as numbered on the sheet as one.
we have a motion to take 2, 3, and 4 as one.
Second?
And a second, all in favor? Okay, coming from Parks, all coming from Parks laborer. First one, amount requested $3,741 going to cemetery wages. This is listed as a deficit due to paying time to employee who left. The next one, $800 going to cemetery overtime, transfer for overtime until July 1st. And the next one, $3,000 going to Parks overtime. This transfer to cover July 4th celebration and cleanup.
Motion to approve.
Second?
A motion to approve and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Next one from the clerical account, my requested $500. This one is the one where we discussed signboard maintenance, reason given transfers needed for batteries for the July 4th celebration.
Motion to approve.
Second?
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Next one from the fuel account, $500 is the amount requested, going to the electricity/traffic lights account, reason given the repair of a traffic light on Auburn Street.
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion to approve and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
I believe that is it. We have cemetery. What's that? Are there for, okay. Yeah, so we can do we'll do the cemetery ones. This one is coming from the heating oil account. Amount requested $1,940.61. Reason given, going to the new equipment account. Reason given, supplies needed.
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next one from the education account, amount requested $800, going to the supplies and equipment account, reason given, supplies needed.
Motion to approve.
Second?
A motion to approve and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And from the uniforms account, amount requested $478.63, also going to supplies and equipment, reason given, supplies needed.
Motion to approve.
Second?
A motion to approve and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And this last one, from the contingency account, amount requested $6,200. This one's going to the banking account. Reason given to cover banking charges for the remainder of the year. This is the golf course. We're talking golf course contingency.
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
What's that? I apologize.
Did I miss one?
I had another transfer in front of me. I don't know if it made it on the agenda. Equipment rental into building maintenance for 163. Is that not? Did that not make it up?
Oh,
Small amount one? I think that was approved by the CFO.
Oh, that's there we go.
Yeah, under 250.
oh, that's right.
Then I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick. DDIS? Ms. Coyle, how are you?
Good evening. How are you?
Thanks. Do you want
So,
to go over some DDIS transfers? Looks like you have a couple.
yes. So we have two main transfers this evening. With the heat, this past week has been challenging at the kennel, and we have had an unexpected expense. We had to replace two AC units. There's one unit in the dog kennel, and then there's one unit in the cat room.
I'm sorry, what was the second room?
The cat room,
Cat room? Okay.
cat room. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what
I
we
didn't know.
call it. So the cat, both AC units have been there for years. We haven't replaced them in a while. The one in the dog run has always been a little bit challenged just because the dogs go in and out of their runs, so it struggles to keep up. But with the heat, we just can't. So with the 100-degree weather, we had to make a decision to purchase the units. So that is why we are asking for all three transfers from vaccine, travel, and dues going into kennel maintenance to cover the cost of those purchases. And I have checked with the animal control officer. We're okay in those other lines, so we don't have a need for that money at this time.
Any questions on this one? I guess one of my, and it's probably an odd time to ask the question, and it may be sort of a CFO, as I walked up to the town hall today and wondering if we were going to walk in here, it was going to be 100 degrees in this room, and they had done a nice job of getting it nice and cool in the building, but do we have any plans, whether it's in capital plans for, mini splits for some of the town buildings? Is there, is there a more efficient way instead of spending $300 out of whack on window units? Is that on the radar at all for the town for our municipal buildings? I mean, they are the people's buildings. We do a great job at the senior center if we had to put people in, but if we did have a lengthy heat emergency here in town, do we really have enough places to send our students? Go ahead.
Sure, I can.
I think this.
I apologize.
I was going to say, there's a $1.45 million project that was approved with ARPA funding to do HVAC upgrades, and the town hall is one of the buildings. It's a town hall, police, the senior center, a couple of the schools. So if we cross our fingers and hope that it gets done by next year, we won't be using any of these outside units any longer.
Right.
And that begs my question, because now you brought up ARPA money and there is a fixed amount of time to spend that money. So is there a contractor on board that we know is all set to move? Do we have a start date, or is that something that we're still working on?
We're working on it right now. Joe Fahey, who is a facilities manager over at the schools, we've hired him to be the coordinator of the project. So he is right now working with the design, with the architects. We're getting some of the equipment that's needed. We're going to store some of that, and he's working on the timeline right now so that we get it done before the December of 26 deadline.
Ms. Coyle, did you have something to add, or?
I just wanted to add I believe that the upgrades that Ms. Harnos is talking about, the kennel, I don't believe the kennel is part of that. So the units that are in the kennel are separate.
Yes, that's true, that wouldn't be part of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we take the first three from as one, because they're all going to the same account.
Okay, motion and a second to take those three as one. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so from the vaccine account, amount requested $264.68 going to kennel maintenance. Reason given for all of these three is to cover kennel equipment due to heat emergency. From the travel account, $300 to kennel maintenance, and from the dues account, $300 to kennel maintenance.
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
And the last one I think you have is from the Board of Health. Do you want
Yes.
to cover that one?
So we have a transfer request for funds to come from the clerical line item to go into the contracted services. This is for a professional review of a proposed project that is before the Board of Health. There has been additional information that we have needed from our town consultant. And I don't think I will need all of this, but just so that I don't cut it short, I'm asking for the 3726. We have also, just to let you know, for the clerical line item, I do not need this money. Unfortunately, we lost our clerical within the past couple of weeks. So it was a new hire. Unfortunately, she left for something closer to home. So I will not have another clerical person in the position until we get into the fiscal '26 year.
Are you able to share what the project is, or?
Sure, yes, we have a proposed cemetery on Cemetery Road.
Any questions on this one?
Motion to approve.
So clerical, from the clerical line, amount requested $3,726.51 going to contracted services, reason given a professional review of a health project.
Motion to approve.
Second?
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Okay, this is the CFO. Did you want to cover this purchase, transfer?
Sure. So I'm requesting a transfer of $1,500 from travel and conferences into office supplies to purchase a printer, scanner, copier for my office. Right now, I have a printer in there, but it doesn't do like double-sided. If you wanted to do that, you kind of have to flip the paper around well. So it's just a little bit older model. So for the $1,500, we're able to get the combination of the printer, scanner, and the copier. Right now, we have one printer in the office. It doesn't scan or copy, so we use the hall. We use the hall one. It's not that far.
Well, it's not
much
that
more
confidential either. If you want to do something from your computer to it as a CFO, you really sort of need some confidentiality. I don't think you'd want to just scan that right to the middle of the hallway where someone can see it.
Right, so I thought, for the amount of money there, and I have had a change in the staff in my office, so we didn't use all of the travel and conferences, so I thought that was a good use of some funds.
Would your printer then go to possibly some of the clerical staff to give more privacy, or do you know what IT's intentions for the printer that you will have, that you won't use will be?
I think we'll probably take it offline because we do pay so much per month for
month
it.
for it.
So we'll replace it with the new one and take that one offline, and we'll have it in case somebody would want to use it.
Right, have it for later, but not necessarily incur an increase in the bill with an extra.
Right, right.
Gotcha, thank you.
So that sort of leads to my question. I'm sorry, Charlie. Is this an outright purchase? Is this a lease? Because you just mentioned taking one offline for costs.
Oh, what I meant offline, this is just the purchase, this is the full cost of it, but we do pay, there is a company that we use that covers the maintenance on the printers. So we pay so much per copy, or so much per month, and I think it's like $40. So since I'm not using the other one, I'd like to take that off and then replace it with this, and then it'll go on the printer maintenance contract.
My question was, usually you see when you're into those contracts, you're usually leasing the equipment so that if they, fail in their own, it's just a lease, they'll replace the units. Do we do any leasing of any copiers, printers
we do
townwide?
We do the bigger ones right now. I think the town manager's office is an older one, so there's no lease on that. Downstairs in the town hall and upstairs, we're still paying lease payments on that one, but those are the big, heavy-duty machines, and a lot of the offices use those.
That was my question. You took it. Thank you. That's all right.
I'll let you get the next one.
No, that's all right. Got the answer.
Okay, any other questions on this one? If not, coming from the travel conferences line item from the accounting department, amount requested $1,500, going to the office supplies account, reason given to purchase a printer/scanner/copier for the CFO Town Accountant's Office.
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion to approve and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
From the Finance Treasurer Collector's Office, coming from the tax title account, amount requested $360, going to the clerical account, reason given extra help at fiscal year end and to cover for employee vacation.
Okay, so as you probably are aware, the treasurer collector retired this month, just like last week. And that we're bringing we're kind of in transition in the office. So the assistant's becoming the treasurer collector. So we're just kind of looking for, it's fiscal year end, so the timing's kind of tough. So we're bringing in someone that used to work retired from the town, used to work in the office, and she's helping out while one of the other staff is on vacation. And the difference in what's left in the line and whatever is the $360.
Questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
This one's going to be coming from the reserve fund, requested by the finance treasurer collector, going to the treasurer/collector's salary account. Amount requested $14,660. Reason for the shortage in that account is a payout of accrued time due to the treasurer collector's retirement.
So this would be accrued vacation time, and also she's retiring, so there's a retirement buyback on that from her sick time as well.
And who was the,
This was Mary Ann Murphy, the treasurer collector,
how long had she been an employee?
over 10 years.
Any questions?
Unexpected retirement or,
No, it was expected, but she's been talking about it for years.
okay.
So it's not something that unfortunately we couldn't anticipate exactly when.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
she finally pulled the plug and said, and I'm like, oh no, not June.
Fair enough.
But she is going to be coming back and helping us out, close out the end of the year.
Okay.
That'll be very helpful.
Congratulations to her and finally decided to
Yeah.
to the retirement goal line.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
This one is also from the reserve account, requested by the town manager's office. It is going to the salary account, amount requested $40,000. The reason for the shortage is the town manager retirement payout and the interim town manager pay.
So as you know, the town manager, Ed, retired at the end of January. We didn't want to do a transfer at that time because we wanted to go through the whole process to see who was going to be the interim, and then Dory became the interim. And then we wanted to see who got the job as the town manager. And at this point, we were able to reconcile the account. So this basically covers the payout for the town manager and also the interim, the difference in pay for the interim town manager. And if I could, I just want to say this year is getting a little tight. After these transfers, there's only about $15,000 left in the reserve fund. And there still might be a few more transfers needed. So I just wanted to let you know we're kind of getting down in the balance in the account.
Is it funded for fiscal year '26 that's coming up? So this is just the balance, the 15,000 you're referring to means up till June 30th.
Correct, that's for fiscal '25. There's been a lot of retirements and different things happen there, so we did have to go back to the reserve fund in a few cases. And for fiscal '26, it is funded at a little bit higher rate, and then we had also talked about the salary reserve is funded for next fiscal year as well, for the contracts.
Thank you for the update.
So, I just wanted to, it seems like we've gone to the reserve account. So is that normal, like in a normal year? This is my first time through it. So is this normal to hit that reserve account as much as this? Or you mentioned retirements and some unexpected stuff this year. Is that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more in this fiscal year. There's
Okay.
been several different retirements in the different departments that couldn't really be anticipated ahead of time in order to build it into the budget. So it's a little bit closer than it normally is.
Okay. All right.
So why wouldn't we, I understand why we use the salary reserve account for some of the things that we do. But why don't we use the salary reserve account for large ticket items like this? Why do we just use the salary account? Because it doesn't say salary reserve on the 51101 line, it just says salary account. So I'm just sort of surprised that we're, and again, just as you're pointing out, you have to be careful because you have an account number that's affiliated with a title. And at the top, it says reserve fund, but on the line item, it doesn't say salary reserve. So is it a salary reserve account or is it just a salary account?
It's coming from the regular reserve fund going
To fund the salary account?
into the salary
Right.
account.
But there's also a salary reserve fund, is that?
There is. We actually break it down between a regular reserve fund
Right.
and a salary reserve.
So-
But generally,
Yeah.
the salary reserve is where the 1% for
Right.
the
Exactly.
non-unions come
Right,
from.
exactly, right.
And if there was more money left, right now, there's $4,800 4,810.
Right, well, yeah,
So if it
because-
was more, then I would probably tap into that for some of these transfers, but that one is low as well.
Right. So to that point, what you're saying is that once we take the 40,000, we're then bringing that down to 15.
Correct. So there would be
That's right,
15 left
right.
in the regular reserve,
Right.
and then the 4,800 left in the salary reserve.
That's really was sort of where I was heading and the use of those accounts.
Okay, any additional questions on this one?
I think to the board, why I'm having this discussion and to your question as well, you want to make sure that when they come to us for salary transfers, if they're not coming from their budgets, whether they're coming from a salary account or a salary reserve account, and they all have specific parameters. So that's why I was looking for clarification. And it just would seem to me that if you anticipate that a certain amount of people could retire, which has been I know we can't do that, but I understand people can, like, they want to retire, but when you've been with a place for quite a bit, and I know we're at will, so at any time we can terminate someone, so we'll just put all the cards out on the table. But in the reality in which we know that we're doing these transfers, and a warrant article, when it goes before us as a town, is a legal document. So one of the reasons why we sit here to do all these transfers is because you can't have at fiscal year end a negative. It affects the way that they creditate the town and everything. You can't have a line item go below zero because technically you're breaking the law. That's why the snow and ice can go below zero, because it's guarded by some legal parameters. But when we're sitting here doing transfers, what we're doing is we're keeping the law intact, because we're preventing the account from going into a zero deficit or below a zero deficit. So and I'm saying this because I know we can't ask someone, but I'm amazed that after all of these years, that when we know that retirements are on the dashboard, for the lack of a better way, that we can't have some other, and we have an HR department, and I'd be more than happy to discuss it with them. And I know the answer is going to be, you can't ask someone to give you a 3-month notice. Well, I sort of think you can. I mean, I've worked in other companies. I've been a senior manager. I've been out there. Their salaries are steep. And so as a courtesy to the town, I don't see why, if somebody knows that they're coming down the road, we seem to be in Auburn in this position where we can't have that conversation with individuals and say, gee, and we're, in the fall, are you thinking that you're going to retire? Because it would make a difference on how we fund our reserve account and our salary reserve account, and how we fund so there's multiple ways to protect this. And as you can see, we get down to June, and now we're faced with having some of these unexpected retirements, and most recent, the police chief. So, that now we're down to $15,000, which is why I asked the question when the deputy police officer was here, Mills, that I said, hey, we just had a retirement, is there enough money? And those are the kinds of questions that, so I just wanted to say that I understand that I'm not asking to force it, but I just want people to understand that their positions and their salaries can have a major impact on the budget.
Is there following up on the impact, is there a limit to how many weeks or years people can accumulate sick time or vacation time? Because the payout, theoretically, should already be in the budget if it was in the current year, right? Like if you have 4 weeks vacation and it's already in the budget and the person leaves today, then you've only got, the same 4 weeks that was already in the salary. But if you're accumulating, if somebody has 16 weeks vacation and, 120 sick days, and then we're paying that all out, in this fiscal year, because we're allowing employees to accumulate, then I think that would go to your point, where every time somebody retires, they kind of a financial bomb in the budget. Is it, so I don't know what the policy or
I don't think
tradition
they,
is.
I mean, if you're saying the amount is always in the budget because they're an employee for that year, you know, if it's someone that works, is in administrative capacity, there's not monies put aside for their vacation time. That's just time they're not in the.
Right, they're just not here, but they're
Not
still
here.
getting paid.
But if
It's
they-
sort of the same thing with sick time. But if the person never takes a sick day, but they can take sick time when they leave, if they're accumulating it from year to year, that's all basically double time. Because it's sick time they never took, they got all their regular time for the year, and then when they retire, they're taking all their sick time, which is for time they haven't spent, but it's time that theoretically, if they were sick, they could use. But there is no theoretical here. This is real, these are real dollars and cents.
I
And
guess-
they're not in the budget, those dollars and cents.
I guess I would ask on, just before we, on Patrick's note, is there a way to incentivize, you know, we'll just say 20-year employees beyond who give a year's notice so that you can plan into a fiscal year to say, whatever that incentive may be, whether it's a lump $500, you get an extra $500 at retirement because we were able to plan out, or, you know, the normal payout for sick leave is 20% of the rate, but we'll give you 22% if you give us a year's notice so we can plan a little better. I didn't know, does that exist, or is that something that's utilized anywhere else in government?
I can tell you it's utilized in other places. I can tell you that, but I'll let Karen speak for a moment.
What my intention was is that when we go to put together the FY 2027 budget, that I'm going to ask the departments if there are any anticipated retirements. Because I think we should have something built in to the salaried reserve for potential retirements. And when it comes to there actually is a maximum amount of sick days that you can get paid for when you retire. And I believe it's $20 a day, and I think it's 150 days. Don't quote me for sure, but that's what
Right.
I'm thinking. So I think it's a maximum of, say, like $3,000 that a person can be paid out. So it's not, open-ended. And when it comes to the vacation, generally, the employees could carry over like up to a week of vacation. There could be special circumstances where maybe they're allowed to carry more, but then they also get their new allotment at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then they start accruing again. So that's what kind of puts this, so if somebody leaves in like December, they'll take their balance, but then they also accrued from July through December. And so they're taking that with them. So I am going to try to see if we can get a little bit more information on retirement.
Well, I've been on the finance committee, this is my second time here and in the past. And I do know, as being a volunteer in the town and in being on different boards, people are aware that they're thinking of retiring. They know. I mean, there's conversation. I mean, I'm just again saying that I know the gauntlet drops when the retirement notice comes in. I get that part and I get the payout part. But what it does is we're making decisions throughout the year to manage budgets for not only payroll, but for utilities and so many other, we have to pay interest and debt and all of these other things. We have to go to the taxpayer and we have to increase taxes, or we have a certain amount of money that we have to work with. And so at the end of the day, when we go to close out the budget at the end of the year, it would be nice to have it be, or ideal to have it be not so unexpected. And it does give us the ability to make sure that we're putting adequate money at the beginning of the year in the reserve accounts that we need because of the anticipated, so there's a lot of moving parts. It's not that simple, but an acknowledgement, or again, I'm not asking them to commit it, but, I happen to know somebody right now who's retiring, and they were incentivized in another community because they're given a year's notice, they reaped a small benefit for that. But the reality is that when the governing boards that had to deal with the budgets and the whole financial process for that community got together, they were able to incorporate that into the formula so that they knew that, you know, they now had that piece of information.
It sounds like basically what you're saying is, it's certainly not like what the chief just did, was he's retiring to, you know, July 4th, so he's in the next fiscal year, which gives us a year to sort of,
Right, but we've already
Accumulate that.
put the budget before town meeting. They've already voted on it, and it was done and had to be worked on back in January and February. And I wonder if that was, you know, something that was thought out. So, you know, the way I look at it is, it was news to me the other night that there could be conversation in the hallway. There could be something. The chief of police has been the chief of police for many years, and he might, have 2 years left. He might have 4 years left. I get that part. But the point I'm trying to make is that the budget's being done 6 months in advance. And sometimes Ed, when he was doing it, or Karen will be now, you're starting those templates and some of that gathering of information in November. We get through the summer, and by the time, we're having transfer meetings and we're having pre-budget meetings, for the next fiscal year come November. So, it's important for this conversation today because there's two budgets that are impacted right now. We have to end fiscal year that we're in by June 30th, which was established a year and 9 months ago. And we have to make sure that there's money starting July 1st to cover this, because if it didn't come up as a transfer in this meeting, it could conceivably become a transfer in the first meeting in July, because they will have gotten into the new year and needed to encumber it and also known that it wasn't expected. So it does have an impact.
Absolutely.
Andrew?
Just so obviously with these reserve accounts being low, if they deplete, where do we go from there? If they're depleted, like if the reserve account and the salary reserve have no money left, if there are, say there's, $24,000 in transfers, for the end of the fiscal year, where do we go after that? Just because I don't know.
From what I can see, other than the snow and ice, we're in pretty good shape. So I was going to mention that later on, but I can mention it now. It's close to 145,000 deficit in snow and ice. And I'm hoping to go through the accounts. And I'm going to suggest that we have a meeting. We're going to need a meeting on July 9th just to do some final cleanup. I'm going to see if I can find that I'm going to look at the health insurance to see where we're at, do some additional analysis to see if I can cover that. Now, the snow and ice can be put on the tax recap, so we don't necessarily have to come up with those funds. It would be nice to, though, so that would be nice and clean. So I'm not anticipating that we're not going to have enough within all the town departments to close out the year.
Thank you.
Anything else on this one? Okay, I think I've read it in, but it's from the reserve account going to salary, amount requested 40,000.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Second. And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is it for the transfers.
While we're on transfers, if I could, through the chair, I did have with the CFO here tonight, I did have a question about a transfer at the last meeting, but she wasn't available. She was unfortunately ill from vacation. So I just wanted to, I abstained from this because I didn't feel that there was an adequate description or reason for the transfer. But we had a contingency, if you recall, there was $17,460 in our contingency account, and we moved $1,354, and then there was another transfer, and the description said adjustment for minimum salary of FLSA exempt employees, and I was concerned that they were under budgeted, that was sort of saying that we didn't anticipate the rate that we should have been paying them. Anytime I see a federal or legal law, my eyebrow goes up on payroll because I'm concerned that there might have been a miscall on the budget process.
Actually, there wasn't. There was something that was put forward on the federal level that as of January 1st, that anyone that was getting a salary per week had to make a minimum amount. So that was the difference between what these employees were making and what they were required to make. And that's what we put forward as the transfer. So their salaries were actually increased, but it wasn't because it was calculated improperly.
Okay. And then that correction has followed through into the new fiscal year budget?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Right.
I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. The federal government is telling the towns what the minimum salary should be for public employees. Is that it?
That is correct, but,
Okay.
but let me say this, it was proposed, it went forward, and we went forward with it, but I don't think it was ever, when I did the research on it, it doesn't look like it was passed. So it was something that we did go forward with, anticipating that it would pass through, but it actually didn't. But
And which Congress
we did
was-
actually end up increasing the salaries for a few employees.
Is that the current Congress or a past Congress or?
Well, it was before January 1st of '25.
So it had to been the previous Congress.
There's also, if I could, through the chair again, with some of these federal mandates or these laws that go into effect, there is a federal law, there is a state, so we'll take payroll as a simplistic issue. There's federal payroll laws, there's state payroll laws, and there's municipal payroll laws. And what most federal, municipal, and state agencies do is they do best practices. So what they do is they say, ours isn't as good as the federal, so we'll absorb the federal. Or the community may say, ours is better than the state, we're going to use ours. I'm just trying to, the whole idea is that you don't want the employee to get the best practice of a payroll policy and have to have it undermined because there's a policy that isn't as good as theirs. It's not the strongest answer I can give. The key here is best practices, but sometimes you're not going to have all three payroll items aligned. And so the term best practices,
That's a whole different situation.
yeah, you
And
means,
I just, because, you always hear about unfunded mandates.
Right.
And it's like, wow, like you could drive a truck through this one. And it's funny how, it's just the optics of it. It's just, you think we should coordinate, like, all three governments, maybe collect the taxes the same way? I mean, it's just, I don't have a problem with making consistency. It should be consistent, right? Everybody goes to work. Everybody should get the same benefits, the same pay. It would make everybody's life a lot more logical if the system was logical. But I just wanted to make sure I heard it properly. That's all.
Mike, I'm doing this.
Thank you.
I think next on our agenda is Karen, you want to do some discussion on CIP and
Sure. So I wanted to share this with the Finance Committee. So this is a report that the Select Board asked for on capital project balances. And these are basically covering projects where we went to borrow funds for. So I put together a list under the different departments, the year that it was approved, the balances, and then I went to the departments to ask if these accounts needed to be kept open, when they expected the expenses to hit, and then, or if they needed to be closed or repurposed. So I just wanted to share this because I went through it with the Board of Selectmen the other night, just to keep you in the loop with everything. So there's some small balances that are left. There's actually, that we're planning on closing. It's actually some old balances that we went and looked back, like the first two were from annual town meetings in 90 and 93 for repairs to Pondville Dam. So either the department head is going to have to commit to spending the funds. Now, in the discussion, we talked about what to do with leftover capital projects funds. With some of the smaller amounts, we can close them out to the general fund. They'll be certified as free cash. But then the select board was concerned about if the town meeting had voted to borrow funds, that maybe we wanted to use that for capital projects. So we're looking into a potential capital stabilization fund. Only thing we have to keep in mind with some of these projects is once we borrow, we can only repurpose to another project that we could borrow for the same or longer period of time. So if we borrowed something for, say, like a 20-year project, we couldn't spend it on computers that might have a life of 5 years. So we kind of have to work out some of those logistics. But the other thing that I pointed out too is there was some money left if you go to page 3, I think it is, or page 2. There's some highlighted amounts under here in like light blue and light orange that are left over from school projects. So those sometimes have a little bit more restrictions. So the one in blue, the surplus proceeds can be appropriated, as I had just mentioned, for any other project that you could borrow from an equal or greater period of time. Or if it's over 50,000, then you could apply it to debt service if the select board approves it. Those are under the 50,000, but I just kind of wanted to
Would the debt
give-
service in that particular case have to go to school debt service? Because it's a school borrowing?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
It could go to any debt service.
good, okay.
And then there was 265,000 plus that was left over from the middle school. In that case, that was debt excluded project. So we could appropriate that leftover funds for another debt excluded project, say like the fire station. And we could, instead of borrowing, we could use the funds we have on hand. But we would have to make a debt exclusion adjustment if we were going to use the funds for a project that isn't debt excluded. So sometimes it gets a little more complicated as to when to use the funds, but I wanted to just give an idea of what was happening here. And I think the town manager and myself are going to go through some of these and make some recommendations to the select board. But also as well, I wanted you to be aware of what was still out there, outstanding. And they also did ask me for a balance. You know how we have the articles, the CIP? There's also some tax levy money that funds that and some other money. So I'm going to do a report on that as well, what's left over in those types of projects.
You mentioned during your presentation a moment ago, you said something about a capital improvement stabilization fund. Is that true?
I was going to look into that because I did have that in another community that was in before Auburn. So you can create a capital project stabilization fund and you can appropriate money into that and then vote it out.
Is that interest bearing?
used.
It would be a non-interest bearing account? I'll explain why I'm asking. I was at the selectmen's meeting the other night and I apologize, our former chair, I can't think of her last name.
Oh, Ann.
Yeah.
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh, right. Ms. Kavanaugh brought up the word arbitrage, and I wanted to reiterate that because one of the things you have to be careful about is you can't utilize borrowed money, especially in a municipality, to gain. So if the interest we're paying on a borrowing is, say, 5%, and you can't all of a sudden put it in a fund that you're getting a 7% yield because that's you're gaining potential over, it's involved, but there's, I think to stay on my side of the court, because it's been a while since I've talked about it, basically what it implies is that you can't benefit from the money you're borrowing be financially beyond the scope of what you're using it to pay for, because then there's a conflict of interest in the transaction. So I just wanted to point out that I know from time of working around some of this stuff that when you do borrow, you have to be very careful where you disperse it.
As a practical matter, separate from the arbitrage law thing, this is funds that haven't been expended, correct? But the project is done? Am I?
In some of these cases, yes, in some of them, the
Not in all of
projects are
them, but in
continuing.
some of them. So technically, it's depending on the percentage, this is free cash that's in the bookkeeping system. And when we're depositing money, as much as we borrow, we also deposit. The question then really is only the difference between what our normal interest return is compared to what the rates were when this money was borrowed, which could be all over the map because interest rates over 30 or 40 years, it can be all over the map. I'm not sure anybody would, you'd probably go out of your mind trying to audit that question. Whether whether we're getting a 5% return, because rates are high right now. And, the Pondville Dam might have been at 2%. But technically, if following the discussion, that $6,000 that's left over from 1993 is actually guilty of arbitrage. Because we're getting, today's rates are at 6% normally, but that money would have been borrowed at 2% in 93.
Not necessarily, it's because each borrowing, that's why I asked if the school money had to go to the school, because when you borrow debt and you go to market and you sell bonds, there's a whole group of regulatory issues that follow them, and then there's a whole accounting. So I'd be more apt to make sure that, I'm sure they wouldn't have been left open if we knew we were in jeopardy of leaving them open.
I mean, I think the purpose of the law is when you borrow 40 million, that you don't put it in a bank account and get 7%.
Well, you can't
Well, you
get
borrowed
multiple-
it for 4%. I mean, that's what the state is auditing. Nobody's auditing, 5,500 from 1993. And God forbid they were. But it's just interesting because there should be a mechanism. If you go out and buy something and it doesn't cost what you budgeted, there should be a logical mechanism.
No, they're
If they
not.
would take that money and
Well,
put it back in the general fund.
just a
or
point of
whatever.
correction, they're not auditing you back from 1993, but through the chair, I believe I'm correct, that when you have something this old, that you disclose it at the time of audit every year. Because they see every year, don't you have to show a similar schedule like this to them, and that they're going to see that this is still open? So even though they're not looking back at 1993, they're being provided a schedule in their audit, a document that shows that this balance is still out there. So I would think that these are okay balances.
Well, I don't think it's such a big deal for the auditors. It's more for if, from borrowing, if the feds were to come to us or something like that. And because we're supposed to spend down the money based upon certain percentages over a certain number of years.
Right.
Right. So just in this case, there happened to be an old account that had been left on the books for a long time that just hadn't been closed out. But the town manager and myself are going to work on updating the debt policies. And that's going to be part of this too, that if a project is outstanding beyond the period of time that it should be expended and it's completed, or if something can't be completed on or whatever, then something is going to happen with it. Either it's going to be closed or transferred to another account. These aren't going to be on here
You're not
for
gonna
as
have
many
such a-
years
that
any
many
longer.
years, right.
We're going to update all of the policies and take care of this.
I assume this hasn't been done before since some of these are almost, 30-plus years old. We probably haven't gone through some of these small balances before. This isn't kind
Right,
of a
see,
normal
that's the
thing
thing,
that we've done.
that's what we're doing now. Like I
Yeah.
did the same thing with some of the special revenue accounts. Last fiscal year, there was a lot of old balances, inactive accounts, small things that I cleaned up. So that's what we're trying to do here as well. But if there's anything substantial, we may not want to close it yet.
Do you plan to bring this, this is great, I appreciate it. Do you plan to kind of update what happens with these when you get through this, or?
Sure, and I actually do this at the end of every fiscal year, so I can always give you an update so that you can see maybe what dropped off of here. And yes, these are annual schedules that I do update.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, just to Andy's point, I think it's important that the taxpayers, that you sort of presented this in some of these accounts that were approved at town meeting, or for borrowing back in the day, it's sort of disclosed where those remaining funds went. So I guess I would ask those department heads that have some, maybe going to reutilize these, there'd be some sort of, report on where those funds ended up going as you're closing out items, maybe a report that says, okay, we took that $43,000 that was originally for this project, it still fit the criteria for this open project, and it was moved there. So we could see how they close out. So when you
Okay.
bring this back to us, we kind of have an idea of what that next step was, that next column as to.
Right,
where
for
that
like,
money's-
as an example, under DPW, if you go down a little bit, the 25,620, and they commented, we plan on reappropriating this for Pinehurst Ave, but that would have to go to town meeting to be repurposed. So that's just an example of using the funds for another project, but it's always very transparent and it has to go for vote.
But your understanding is, for instance, like, we couldn't take this 25,000 and put it into roads directly because we're not borrowing.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
We could, like, this, using your example of the Auburn Street design.
Yep.
So there's 26,000 from, what is it,
2009.
2009, so it's been there a while.
Yes.
We couldn't just take we couldn't take that budget amount and transfer it into highway for roads, for
See,
instance.
what I would have to do is I would have to go back to see on that Auburn Street design, when it was borrowed, how many years it was estimated it could be borrowed for. So say this might only have a life of 10 years, but I'll have to do some research to see, and then you'd have to put it to another project that would be 10 years or more, so potentially you could.
But if.
So again,
If
this is-
town meeting approved it, if it was worded at town meeting back in 2009, $100,000 for Auburn Street design, in order to use that remaining balance, there's going to have to be a line item at town meeting to say, repurpose from design to Pinehurst design, $26,000.
Correct, or
So
to
all of these,
roads.
all of
or-
these items here, potentially, if they were repurposed for another project, would have to have a separate town meeting
I
line.
guess what I'm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm confused by is, so this is, technically, this is cash on hand. So if we have to use the cash on hand on a debt project, you're essentially saying we have to go out and buy something and use this to pay the interest, as opposed to just using it as the actual capital, which to me is a little bit upside down. Because
No, I'm not sure. I guess, for example, if we were to repurpose this for the Pinehurst Ave design, and say the design was $200,000, then we would only borrow the difference between the 200,000 and the 25, because we already have the 25,000 in cash on hand.
It's the borrow.
Does that make sense?
So it could only be used on a project where we're borrowing.
So we would just borrow less on that project.
I guess my question would be, when they're drafting these town meeting lines for CIPs, are we being too specific? Should the project say for road design to include town roadways, so that when there's money from Auburn Street you don't use the full amount, you can.
Well, actually, no, you
Probably
can't,
not.
because what happens when you go before so you have the governing board of town meeting, and then you have these individuals at the state level and these organizations where you borrow against, and if you don't word it in a specific way, then it hinders you from borrowing because you lack clarity in their ability to manage the money.
Right, like, for example, this town meeting warrant article from Auburn Street needed to go to the bond council. And they need to make sure everything is worded properly and that it's clarified, like you said.
Because there's the bond council, there's the borrowing organization, and there are multiple people, because if it isn't worded correctly, then it may not pass, and they may not let you borrow the money. So it sort of has to be very specific. And bond counsel is usually, the town doesn't necessarily do the verbiage on the request. It's usually bond counsel that, I know when I borrowed for Marlboro, I sent my writing to bond counsel, and then bond counsel corrected it and sent it back to me.
I guess my last question on this, because we're beating this up on a hot night, but potentially, if the schools department said, hey, we've got $100,000 for new windows at Bryn Mawr, could they in turn, when they write a line for town meeting, say, repurpose the Swanson monies for this towards this project? Could they take multiple of these lines? Because they're all relatively small, multiple lines to facilitate one larger project?
Yes.
That would probably be the way they would word it. because it would make a connection between the open balances and the project that you would want to complete.
Okay. Thank you. Learned a lot tonight.
Yeah.
Do you have in this thing that you created, just out of curiosity, do you have like a chart, a column of whether some of these are ongoing and some are completed? Do you have a column that shows what's open and what's completed? Because generically, this is about capital improvement. It's not about this deep in the weeds conversation. So we've kind of we've got a long way off of what you prepared here. But I'm just curious, because there's no way of looking at this. I mean, some of them are obviously new because they're 2025. So
Right.
presumably, those projects aren't completed or these aren't necessarily surplus funds per se. But some of them are because they're from 1993. But did you create a column that would show that? So I'm kind of curious
Yes.
what the total would be of stuff that's, I don't, what do we want to call it? Expired capital projects of which there's funds left over. Would be that be the way to describe it? I'm not sure.
Right. I think you kind of have to look at everything account by account or project by project, just so you can see, okay, how much is left over? Could we close this? Is this something that has to be repurposed? So at this point, I just kind of got the thoughts of the department head. Okay, what are your thoughts on all of these projects? You know, so this isn't anything that's, I don't know if that was your question, but this, you know, I had to research this over and above.
Right. Yeah,
But
this
I'm
is a
def-
very interesting thing you created.
Yeah, but I'm definitely
Sure.
going to follow this, because if someone said that they expect this to be expended in 25 and 26, I'm going to be following up on that to make sure that this gets clean.
It's a big number. I mean, $2.7 million worth of approved borrowing that is still sitting, like you said, in an accounting.
Well, I think that, you know, the
And they don't
biggest,
have to
Relative.
spend it. They can, ideally, the project is done, so you don't need to spend extra on the project if it's done. But it would be nice to take that money back to the taxpayers and fund it, fund another budget line item. And
but I think I know what you were getting at. I guess there would have to be another column here that I would break this out between, you know, potentially completed projects, closing or going to like a capital reserve versus what is active. So most of this is active currently.
Yeah, like there's a bunch
Is
of
like
stuff from
24,
25.
25.
Yeah, so those are probably active projects we're still working on, where, obviously the 1990 and 93 are completed.
Yeah, those are kind of outliers
Yeah.
on those. But say, for example, even something from 2019, the Auburn Street reconstruction, that's something that we're working on now. So you might think that it is a little bit older, but that's a project that's ongoing.
Thank you for it. That's a great schedule.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else on this one, Karen, or?
Oh, I'm good.
Thank
Thank
guys.
you.
Any other questions on here? I know I sort of glossed over a little bit, but we did have a series of transfers that were up to the $250 mark, which we've authorized the CFO to approve on her own, and we've been given copies of those if anybody had any questions on those. If not, we didn't have any minutes for this evening. Any other questions? You mentioned July 9th, potentially. You'll get to us as soon as
Yes,
possible.
so
It's
if
certainly
you could
busy.
please hold the date open. I think we're definitely going to need a meeting on July 9th, because I did talk to the fire chief, and I believe he's going to need to move a little bit of money for overtime, but he's hoping maybe it would be within his budget. But I think he's going to have to do that, and as I mentioned, I'd like to see if I could also find some funds within the budget to see if I could cover the snow and ice.
July 9th is just the 2 days before we get into the middle of July. Is that going to be enough time for the Finance Committee to weigh in on some of this and then meet any fiscal requirements to get year-end stuff in?
Yes. Because I'm planning to run the final warrant probably on the 14th of July.
Of July, okay, so.
I will be here scouring over all of this. So, yeah, it should. I mean, we'd love more time, but that's all we have, yeah.
Any other questions from the committee?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion to adjourn and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.